A transporter is anybody that you're involved with, possibly on a day-to-day basis, that you have to move from simply one point to another, or through their own agenda or curriculum of a day.
I would think a transporter would be some people that's moving people from point A to point B under very difficult, dangerous positions.
I was in the Secret Service and then later in private security. It's moving people, making sure that they and their belongings get someplace safely.
This whole idea of transporting, whether it is people or information, is absolutely not new. I know that during the Revolutionary War, Washington got a lot of his information from transporters, a network of, you might call them spies, but back then they were just people who gave you information.
My definition of a professional transporter is somebody who has a foundation of special operations, has built on that through the years with experience and training on a global level.
Every time you're dealing with a protectee and there's danger, there is a lot of adrenaline, particularly with the President of the United States, and particularly in a crowd, or when there's a situation where we have intelligence where there could be a raise in the threat level.
Adrenaline's a negative thing. You know, you have to keep a cool head at all times. The hotter it gets out there, the more you got to stay cool.
You might go home and take 3 or 4 hours to relax before you could go to sleep because that adrenaline is just pumping in your veins.
We talk about the ability to deal with confrontation, and a professional will have done the groundwork to where the client or the package never deals with a confrontation.
It happened when Diana died in a car accident because of the misjudgments of her security person, who is ultimately responsible for the environment of your protectee. I don't want to hear about drivers. I don't want to hear about drunk drivers. All of those things should have come under the control of her protectee. He failed her. It resulted in her death.
Some of our clients are executives,
Movie industry people,
Corporate individuals.
celebrities,
I protected members of royal families,
VIPs,
Fortune 500 companies.
government members of countries that are at times perceived to be adversarial to us.
We pride ourselves in a low-key and covert operation. We have done a great job if nobody even knows that our client or our material is moving.
We have an organization where we employ only active or retired law enforcement agents exclusively.
people who've worked in elite counterterrorism unit. Their background is not just dealing with terrorism, armed robbers, bad guys, but survival.
We move people, who are important. That's our niche. We're not a guard service. We don't have guys that work for me for $8, $9, and $10 an hour.
I was trained at the infantry school in basic combat with weapons and ammunition, various weapons and communications. Then I got to Korea and I was given special training there to go into North Korea.
The common denominator with all of us, quite candidly, is the fact that we've gone through formal learning environments in law enforcement, and more importantly, street experience.
A lot of firearms training. Firearms training is extremely important.
All the operators have trained in some form of martial arts.
It's important because there are times when you cannot carry a weapon, whether there be metal detectors around or whether it be too prominent on your person, then you have to use your hands.
This business is a relentless accounting of who's in the space of your protectee. If you don't look around to see who's adversarial or a threat, all you're going to be doing is apprehending somebody after they've harmed somebody you worked for. You failed your mission.
One of the things, especially from the military, that I've learned is that when things get slow and you get lax, that's when something's going to happen. It has to be precise. There is no room for error. Failure is not an option. You have to be at the top of your game every day.
Some people have natural aptitudes to look at situations, process information, and make decisions. That's a big part of it.
Shortly after joining the Navy, I went into SEAL training, started my career in special operations. SEALs are taught from the beginning to be resourceful and innovative, use your imagination.
And I speak Russian, and I speak fluent German. I spoke German before I spoke English. Because here again, you are the person that has to blend in. There's a lot that you're going to have to do out in the open, and you can't bring suspicion on yourself by speaking either the book version of the language, using words that are out of use or archaic. Anything that would draw attention to you, you have to avoid.
I set my watches 15 minutes ahead of everybody, because I'm 15 minutes ahead of you in my thought process when I work for you. I don't have the luxury to get caught in a moment with you. I got to know what you're doing now, where we came from, how it translates through the day, and where we are going later.
You also have to be schooled in the social mores of the area so that you don't do something incredibly stupid, introduce yourself the wrong way, say something that might have a double meaning where you are.
I think a lot of the people are motivated by the sense of accomplishment when they are challenged with trying to protect a client, a principal, or their material items, whether it's transporting stationary residence or industrial business.
Hello?
There are times that you insert yourself into situations, countries domestically or internationally, where you're more clandestine about it. It's driven by need.
And when we're talking about the Secret Service or we're talking about government protection, you mostly would have access to whatever intelligence you might need from whatever agency you might be able to get it from.
You know, networking is important. Networking might really relate to your ability to generate resources in the form of manpower.
In the private sector, you still want intelligence. And smart people that do it right are going to go to great lengths to get intelligence from wherever they can get it.
Sometimes people gravitate towards this business in particular for the wrong reason. A lot of the companies have out-of-work actors, out-of-work models, out-of-work bartenders, hotel workers, house painters, and electricians here. And they purport them or misrepresent them to be people who can keep you safe. I will tell you with certitude, and I will take issue with anyone, they cannot. Here's a rule of thumb if you're smart about your business. Anywhere you travel, whether it's from New York to Denver or to Missouri or to Argentina, Buenos Aires, you hire local people.
You're going to visit the local police. You're going to talk to everybody you can talk to. Or you might look up old contacts in the Secret Service, the FBI, or the military, whoever you might know, and try to get a lay of the land and whatever intelligence that you can get.
You're never going to get an approval from the country you're going to, the extraction point. But at least you might be able to get some aid for coming back and getting back into the country.
Out of the United States and countries like Mexico and places in South America, it takes on a whole different meaning because the threat's different.
Foreign governments, you would think they would cooperate to some extent. They do not allow operators to work in their countries independently.
In particular, in traveling through Mexico or South America, you talk about networking. You got to be careful who you network with because you might be dancing with the devil himself. As we're finding out, that's a large part of the problem in Mexico. The only people we trust are our own people.
These individuals we have met through our careers. They're field proven. They know that if we're going to be somewhere at a certain time, they'll be there to meet us, and it's 100% reliable.
Anyone that leaves the United States should understand how important the RSO is in an embassy. That's the regional security officer. He's the State Department representative. He'll provide you an immense amount of information as to who the go-to people might be in the law enforcement community there, or the better hospitals, or the infrastructure, the political climate, a number of things.
Oftentimes when we work in a certain, a foreign country, we use local assets. Could be off-duty police officers, local military guys, local security providers. Even if we're traveling with a client, we'll use those assets locally. They know the area, we don't.
We've dealt with a kidnapping situation. We have been confronted with going to a foreign country to help in securing an individual and getting them back into the United States.
One of the missions I went on was to bring back a scientist. What he was a scientist in and what he was well known for, I couldn't tell you, because that's another one of the aspects of the job. You don't want to know too much about the person you're transporting. You don't want to form a personal connection because that gets in the way in the case of trouble. Because very often your instructions are, should this mission be compromised, leave the subject, go, or pull out your weapon and do whatever is asked of you to be done.
There's a lot of dynamics when you transport someone, and it isn't just done in automobiles. We do it in aircraft as well. We tell our clients, when we take you out of the country, we take your blood supply, for example, because they don't screen for infectious diseases in a lot of countries the way we do here in America. You might need a transfusion. You gotta really know what you're doing there. I'm in this community for 35 years. I've never seen anybody operate cars the way they did in any of the transporter shows. It just is not possible. I'd just like you to be mindful of not employing the practice of bumper locking. That would be a good start. J-turns, where are you doing J-turns in New York City or LA? You're not. That's Hollywood and artistic license.
Well, you know, I wish that I had more experience in driving fast cars, but the countries I dealt with were countries that didn't have fast cars, and the only ones who had the fast cars were officials from those countries.
We're not a car service. We just know in order to elevate your security, I want a law enforcement agent behind the wheel who's part of a solution, not part of a problem, who has gone through what they call EVOC training, emergency vehicle operation courses. Moving people is a little more complicated than putting them in a car, locking a car, and driving them in an Audi A8L, which by coincidence I happen to own. It was a great car.
People are fascinated with things like Transporters or the Bourne series or any of those high-speed, high-action movies, because I think deep down, everybody wants to think that they would be able to do that somehow it would be possible for them to do that. And so they're living vicariously.
The reality of it is, a considerable number of people in my business that travel for extended periods of time with clients and jet set around with them have no lives.
The hours and the travel can be very difficult and wearing.
So I worked 18 hours yesterday. I was in this facility for a week, up at 6 and 7 o'clock in the morning, going to bed 9, 10, 11 o'clock at night. Repetitively, it wears on you.
One time I know I traveled 28 days a month for 9 months.
It's not sexy, it's work. You know, you have to be on all the time.
Because the bottom line, with all the supposed glory, the excitement, the never-ending action, the bottom line is you could be dead in a matter of seconds. And it's not something that most people consider.
There's nothing sexy about living on airplanes. There's nothing sexy about being on boats. That's just perception.
And then again, the other thing they don't consider is very often you do have to take life. And whereas in your mind you might think that, yes, I could do this, being in that situation is very different.
Well, certainly the Secret Service would use lethal force if necessary. You know, again, the key here is not that you're trying to kill someone, you're trying to get them to stop what they were doing in their attack on your protectee.
And this industry just exploded post 9/11. You know, prior to this, the industry had a steady growth every year. After 9/11, it just was off the charts, you know. But there's a lot of characters in this business.
In many cases, you have true professionals that do it, and you have wannabes that do it. And the question is, which one is which? And hopefully the wannabes don't last very long and the professionals do.